One of the most common summer flowering bulb-like plants grown by gardeners everywhere is a gladiolus. And I say bulb-like because the part that you buy and plant is not really a true bulb. It's actually a corm. And unlike a bulb, which is made up of mostly modified leaf bases, kind of like a tulip or an onion, a corm is a compressed stem. So it's a short, wide structure that's very solid. Well, the gladiolus also goes by the name of sword lily, and that just refers to the shape of its leaves. In Latin, gladiolus translates as little sword. And of course, the plants are prized worldwide for their tall, colorful spikes of flowers. Well, we're going to plant some gladiolus corms here in our studio garden, and in order to extend the bloom period, to have a longer amount of color in our gardens, we're going to do successive plantings. So we've got 3 bags of the corms here, and today we're going to plant one of the bags. We'll then wait about 10 to 14 days, come out, plant the next bag. 10 to 14 days after that, we'll plant the 3rd bag. That way we'll extend our gladiolus bloom season, and we won't get all of our blooms at once. Well, we're going to plant these about 4 to 5 inches deep in the ground. And by planting them this deep, that will help ensure that the plants don't flop over or get knocked down by the wind or a heavy rain. If we were to plant them really shallow, we would run more risk of the plants flopping over. This way, this will ensure that the stems are anchored deeper into the soil. We can also see here that I'm planting in a clump as opposed to a straight line. And I think that design technique will work better because when you concentrate the color, I think it makes more of an impact in the garden. Now, if you're growing your gladiolus strictly for cut flower use and you really don't care what they look like in the garden, then a straight line in the back of the garden somewhere out of the way would be fine. If you find that you do have to stake your gladiolus, one thing that works really well is to take some sticks or some bamboo stakes and just put those in the ground around the clump, and then just come back later and tie these with some string or twine, and that should give you the support that you need. The gladiolus will grow in a poor soil, but the better you've enriched the soil and added amendments and organic matter, the better they will perform. Put them in full sun or a position with afternoon shade, and that will help the flowers last a little bit longer. We're going to get a lot of shade or afternoon shade in this spot from our large hackberry tree here at our studio garden. Well, one interesting thing about the gladiolus is that once that flowering scape comes up and starts to bloom, all the flowers point in one direction. They all are arranged in one side of the stem, and the direction that they usually face is to the south. So you want to position these in your garden so where you're looking toward the north, you can see the flowers fully. We've got this pathway that runs along the side of this bed, and people will be able to walk back and forth and look eye to eye into the flowers of our gladiolus. Well, the gladiolus are not hardy in most winters here in Oklahoma. They will come back sometimes, but it's a good idea to dig them up and store them in a cool, dry place, and then you can plant them out the next year, and you can keep them for many years like this. There is a gladiolus that is hardy in Oklahoma. It's called the Byzantine gladiolus, and this is a wonderful dark magenta species. There's a very dark, very nice form of this plant that's considered a southern heirloom plant. It's one of those plants that was kind of passed along from gardener to gardener throughout the South. We don't really see it a lot in the trade, but there is a reliable source where you can buy this corm of this gladiolus, and that's at Old House Gardens. And you can visit their website at oldhousegardens.com, as they specialize in heirloom old garden bulbs. Well, we've got another bulb-like plant we're getting ready to plant over in our patio garden, and this one you're probably not as familiar with. These bulb-like structures are the tubers of a plant called the tuberose. And it's also a wonderful cut flower, and it makes a good garden plant because the white flowers are just incredibly fragrant. And you might think with a name like the tuberose that the plants would be related or somewhat resemble a rose, but they're actually in the agave family, so they don't look anything like a rose, and they're for sure not related. Well, the tuberose has a very interesting history. They're native to Mexico, and they were used by the Aztecs. They were just crazy about the wonderful fragrance of these plants. They would use them in their rituals and ceremonies, and they held them sacred to their god of art, beauty, and love. Well, after Cortez came through, the tuberose was introduced into Europe in about the mid-1500s, and by the late 1800s, it was one of the most popular of all the Victorian blossoms. Well, the plants are still grown in France in a wide-scale method, and they use them in their perfume industry. Well, we're going to plant some here in our patio garden, and that way anyone who is taking a break or comes to visit and sit in this garden will be able to appreciate their wonderful aroma. Well, we've got 5 tubers here, and we're going to just plant them in a pretty tight clump, and we're going to place them to where there's about 2 inches of soil above the tuber, 2 inches between the surface and the bulb, or the tuber, excuse me. We're going to plant this, get this other one in here, and when you're planting these, we want to make sure that we give them a well-drained, well-amended soil in a location in full sun. And when you're buying them, be sure you get the largest bulbs possible so you can develop some really nice large garden plants. Well, you can plant them here in the garden and enjoy them that way. We can plant them in a nice container, and I've heard about a few gardeners that will actually take about 3 tubers and pot them up in say an 8-inch pot and grow them that way until the leaves emerge, and then just transplant the entire clump into the garden. Well, sometimes it'll take a while before the tuberose will emerge, up to a month at times, so don't give up on them. But once they do emerge, they'll produce a low rosette of slender, almost grass-like foliage. And then the flower scape, when it arises, it'll grow up to about 3 feet tall, and it'll have these wonderful white, fragrant flowers. The variety that we're planting is known as the Mexican single because of the numbers of petals and sepals. There's also a variety that has double the amount of petals and sepals, and it's called the pearl. And then there are a few others that have a little tinge of pink to the flowers. The tuberose are only hardy north to about zone 8 or 9, so they generally won't make it through our Oklahoma winters. Although I have had them overwinter on mild winters, especially when I planted them on the south face of a fence or maybe the wall of a house or some other structure. But they can be lifted and stored over the winter. Well, be sure and plant your tuberoses near a place where you may be sitting, such as a patio or maybe by your doorway. That way you can enjoy the wonderful scent, and you too, like the Aztecs, will appreciate the wonderful tuberose.